What's up, everybody? So you want to start a business, you need to make a logo, or you just want to learn to make logos. So what should you do? Should you hire someone to make a logo? Should you make one yourself? Do you need to do a bunch of tutorials in Adobe Illustrator? Well, maybe you should try this new thing called MidJourney that will create logos for you using artificial intelligence. Let's see if you can actually do it. All right, so let's take a look at this first logo. This first logo, I wanted to just basically make a rocket because why not? And the prompt was basically detailed vector rocket logo. So this is the result. As you can see, it's pretty good. There are some artifacts here, and you have to remember that if you're not using the quality 5 parameter, it's not going to be done extremely well. It's going to be basically done kind of like sketches. It's the MidJourney equivalent of sketching. So I think that logo was good, but it needs more explosions. So let's add in lots of rocket fuel to the prompt and see what happens. And as you can see, there's a lot more rocket fuel here, and I think this looks pretty good. But if you know anything about branding, branding is all about colors. So we need to pick some colors, and I decided to pick red, white, and blue. Because why not? So once you add red, white, and blue to the prompt, you get this result, and I think this is really good. And if you click the reroll button, you can actually get it to reroll again. So I did that, and then this is the result. Now I think the 4th version is probably the best version here. So I went ahead and made some variations. And if you look at the variations, some variations are better than others. And so once I clicked my favorite variation, I got this. Now I thought it was really cool, and I think this is a really good logo. So once I upscaled it, I got this logo, and I think it's pretty good. One of the things you have to know about MidJourney is that MidJourney does detail very well and very quickly. If I were to actually learn to draw this would take a ton of time. All right, let's move on to the next logo. So this logo, I decided to make a coffee shop logo. So the prompt I used was simple coffee shop logo, vector graphics, mountain background. So what I got was this, and it's not necessarily bad. It's a good first try, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. One thing that you definitely want to do with logos is you want to use the word logo and vector. Now you can use vector or vector graphics. Vector graphics will give you a slightly more detailed logo. So while that logo was good, I decided to add in the word coffee cup center to make the coffee cup in the center of, well, a coffee store. And I also decided to use the word flat. Using the word flat, it will give you a slightly more minimalist touch to your logo here. So this is what I got here. It's not terrible, but again, we need to add in some colors here. So I decided to use brown, white, green, and dark gray. Now there's a huge difference between dark gray and black. And any designer knows that dark gray is kind of like black, but dark gray will give you a more muted tone. So I decided to hit the reroll button, and I think the bottom one, or version 4, looks the best here. So I went ahead and made 4 variations. I chose the one with the different colored mountains, number 4 here, and this is what came out. Now I think this logo is actually pretty good. Now of course MidJourney doesn't do text for a whole bunch of reasons, but nevertheless, if you really wanted to pay someone or make the text yourself, I think this is a really good logo. Next up, let's try a construction company. So in this one, I started with the prompt of construction company, rhino mascot, detailed vector graphics, happy and smiling here. And I got this, and it looks okay. So you can see that in some of them, there aren't any horns to the rhino. So I think that's kind of weird here. And the bottom left one looks like the rhino's kind of smashed into some construction equipment. So further work is needed. So what I decided to do is I decided to add big bold text to this just to see what would happen. So the next thing I decided to do was say wearing a hard hat, because I feel like the rhino should be wearing a hard hat if it's a construction company, because we don't want OSHA to come in here and remove our logo. So after re-rolling that twice, I decided that version 2 of the second re-roll was a lot better. So I basically made 4 versions of that, and then I upscaled it. And this is the logo. Not terrible, not bad here. It has 2 horns for some reason. Now, oftentimes I get a logo or something in MidJourney where I go back into Photoshop and remove it here. And one of the things you have to understand about MidJourney as of right now is that there will be extra work done. You can't just basically push a button and then get everything you want here. You will have to do some little extra work, especially if you're working with text. All right, let's take a look at the next one here. Now this one I decided to try as something a little bit more experimental, and we'll see if it works or if it doesn't. So for the first one, I decided to add in simple cloud company logo, and then I used the word ASCII. So if you don't know what ASCIIs are, they're basically extra characters that are outside the regular alphabet and number system, and it has its own kind of graphic style to it. So I said a simple cloud company logo ASCII, and this is what came out, and I don't think any of those look good. So what I did is I wanted to say that the cloud should be raining data. And so this is what came out, a little bit better here. and I said simple cloud raining data, and I added in courier text. Now courier is a monospace font that works extremely well with tech-oriented logos. Now this looks pretty good, but again, I do need to go into Photoshop and make it up here. Now this one was kind of experimental, and I thought that the output was meh. I don't think it's really good, but with MidJourney, you always have to experiment. So let's go on to the next logo. Now there's a whole secret language to MidJourney, and one of the things I wanted to do was make a barbershop that looked kind of like clip art here. So for this one, I decided to add in the prompt of attractive man with a very big mustache, brown hair, and clip art logo here. Now I always use the word attractive whatever because it will give you the best results. So what I decided to do next was add in the term barbershop logo. The first one didn't have it, but the second one did, and it actually looks pretty good here. So I decided that the second version looked good, so I went ahead and made 4 variations, and then I upscaled the one I want. Now, I think this result is pretty good here. Now, of course, if I was actually making a logo, I might do this 2, 3, or 4 times, and I might come up with 4 different variations here. But nevertheless, for a very quick and simple thing, I think this looks pretty good. So no matter what program you're using, whether it's MidJourney or Photoshop or the Unreal Engine, you always have to manage your time. You always want to get the most amount of consumer satisfaction for the least amount of time. Next up, let's do a manufacturing company. So the prompt I used was manufacturing company logo gears, and this was the result. I didn't think it was too bad here. Now the first one is actually really good, except it's too detailed for a logo. A lot of logos are actually really simple here. So the next prompt I decided to do was manufacturing company logo gears, blueprint, and pictogram. And this should have made things a lot simpler. And as you can see, there's a lot more that are flat here. Now since I really like the black and gold, I decided to add in black and gold to the prompt here. And of all these, I thought that version 4 was the best, and even though this is a really detailed logo, I thought it was really cool. I made some variations and I upscaled the one I thought was great, and this is what came out. Now I think this is really good for a logo. It might be a bit too on the detailed side, but nevertheless, it's a great start. Next up, let's do a sports logo. So why not have a tiger play hockey? So in this prompt, I decided to use sports team logo, tiger, hockey, and vector graphics here. Now, if you look very closely, there's a lot of artifacts in the logo, and that is to be expected. Again, if you're not using the quality 5 parameter, it's going to not look as good as you think it should. So one of my favorite things to do is use the word action shot. So I took the same logo and added the word action shot to it. And I think number 1 is probably the best. So I decided to make 4 variations here. And if you look very closely, there are a lot of artifacts. And again, you got to use the quality 5 parameter. And then once I did that, I came up with the final image. I think this looks really good for a sports logo, at least for what MidJourney can do. Next up, let's do a minimal logo. So let's do a minimal logo of a bull. So my prompt was simple minimal logo of a bull, style of Rob Janoff. If you don't know who that is the designer who made the Apple logo. So you can actually use designers in your designs and your MidJourney prompts, and you can get something that's similar to their design. And this is what came up. Now, I think all these are pretty good here. I would say that the version 3 is probably the best here, and version 1 also looks good too. So I decided to re-roll it, and when I re-rolled it, they all came out as black and white. Now, this kind of makes sense because the designer made Apple, and Apple is mostly a black and white logo, or at least it doesn't have color in it, or at least it used to have color in it, but it doesn't have now. And I decided to make this one a lot more colorful. So for the prompt, I basically added a few words, colorful, flat, and 2D, and this is what came out. Now, I think these results are actually really good, but it's a little bit too colorful for my taste here. Again, I always like to use 3 colors, maybe 4 for a logo here. So I decided to use orange, white, and black here, and this is what came out. Now, all of these are actually really good, but what? What is that? I thought you weren't allowed to have that in MidJourney. Someone please tell the mods. Anyway, I think all these are pretty good, but number 4 is clearly the best. So let's go ahead and make some variations, and then I upscaled that, and this is the result. I'm really happy with the result. This is probably the best logo we've done so far. But you have to remember though, I could do these same prompts 3 or 4 times and get a terrible result. So sometimes you get a good result, other times you don't. You just have to play around with it. Next up, let's do a vintage logo of a bakery. So for this prompt, I used bread bakery emblem, kitschy vintage retro, simple, and then I added no shading detail, ornamentation, realistic color. And this is what came out. Now I think all these are actually pretty good. I like number 2 and 4 the best. 4 is probably my favorite, so let's go ahead and let's make some variations. And all these variations look pretty good. Like some of them have the wheat, and the bread being cut, but I think the one where the bread is not cut is probably the best one. So let's go ahead and upscale this. Now, I think this is a really good logo, and at the end of the day, if I was starting a bakery, I might use this at least as some concept art for what I really want. All right, let's take a look at making a Viking logo. So the prompt I used was simple minimalist Viking logo, head, vector graphics, flat, and 2D. I decided to use flat and 2D right away, and the reason why is that I wanted that right away. So most of the time I don't use flat and 2D right away. I kind of just use a vague prompt, and the reason why I do this is I want MidJourney to just come up with something that I might have not thought about. And the serendipity actually leads to creativity, but in this case, I did want a flat and 2D logo. Now, I think this really worked out here because all these are really good, but I like version 3 the best here. So I went ahead and made some variations, and these are all really good here. And then I upscaled it. And what I did is I had to upscale it multiple times because you can see that the horn wasn't very good. And I upscaled it again, and the horn was just not very good. So I kind of just left it here. Now, this is something I'd probably do in Illustrator or get someone else to do it for me because this logo is pretty good, but the horn just didn't come out the way I wanted to. You'll find this happens a lot in MidJourney. Now, one of the things MidJourney does extremely well is Japanese style art. And all you have to basically add in is the word Japanese or Japanese art or Japanese retro art, and you get a really good result. So let's make a logo of a squid company. So what I did is I added a simple mascot for a squid company, Japanese style, and this is what came out. I think these are all really good, except number 3 is probably the best. Now, I re-rolled it just in case I wanted to find something a little bit better, and well, I didn't like any of these, so I decided to make variations of version 3. This is what came out here, and then version 2 is the best, so I upscaled that. Now, if you notice, the upscaled version is different from the actual version that you create, and that's because every time that you press a button in MidJourney, it does create something new, almost completely from scratch. Now, at the end of the day, I think this is a really good logo. Now, last but certainly not least, let's go ahead and make a Japanese style logo of a panda samurai. Now, again, anything that's Japanese related will be done very well. And this one is done very well. Now for the prompt, I started off as Panda Samurai, Vector Graphics, Flat 2D logo. And this is what came out. Now I think these are all pretty good here. I would say version 4 is probably the best. But I decided to re-roll it here. And you can see that I re-rolled it once, and then I re-rolled it again. Now, I thought these logos were a bit too detailed, so for the next prompt, I just added the word in simple in front of everything, and this is what came out. Now, I think these are all pretty good here. Now, if I really wanted to make them really simple, I put like simple, minimalist, ultra minimalist, that kind of stuff in the prompt here. But nevertheless, I think this is actually a pretty good result here, but I decided to re-roll it just in case, and I think the second re-roll is quite a bit better. Version 1 and version 2 are also really good here, but I like version 1 the best here. So I decided to make 4 variations, and I decided to upscale it. And this is what the result is, and I think this is actually really good. So this video took a lot of time to make, so it would really help me out if you liked and subscribed to this channel. And again, if you want to see all the prompts for all these images, you can go to PromptHero-AI. I'll put a link in the description to the post here, but I post daily on Prompt.ai for all these kind of tutorials on MidJourney, ChatGTP, etc. So please check out the site. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.